It's my favourite part of the show. Well, of course it is. It's Talking Pints, and I'm joined by Sir Gerald Howarth. Gerald, welcome.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Thanks for the
programme.
Vino.
Cheers. Now, Gerald, you've done many things in your life. You've never shied away from controversy, from opinion. But the thing that really worries me most about you is your background as a banker. Bank of America, and I've been doing war and doing battle with the banking industry. So what's happened to banking?
Well, I left university with a degree in English and 120 hours flying on chipmunks in the University Air Squadron. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, except I didn't want to join the Royal Air Force because I had this great burning political ambition, and I thought that being an officer in the Royal Air Force is not consistent with having a political ambition. And so I didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine had been deputy director of MI6, a guy called George Kennedy Young, himself quite a controversial character. And George was working for Claremont Benson as an advisor. And he suggested that I might go into the city, which I did after having done 2 years running the Society for Individual Freedom. But I always wanted to be a politician. But you can't tell your careers master at school that you like to be a politician because, it's precocious. And there is no route map, as you know yourself. There's absolutely no route map as to how you embark on a political...
And nor should there be.
No, there shouldn't. And I've always said that a House of Commons particularly should be the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. And when you had those swarthy coal miners, deep from underground, the last one, of course, on the Conservative benches being Patrick McLaughlin, and not that I describe my Lord McLaughlin as swarthy, but great...
Well, Lee Anderson, of course, now. Lee Anderson, a former miner, and people with, a varied background as opposed to the sort of career churning out from Oxford.
That's right, because they bring some special expertise. And I brought a little bit of my experience in banking when we had a banking act to try and deal with some of the problems at the time where they wanted to have managers approved by the government. I said, that's mad. All you're doing is handing responsibility to the government, taking it away from people who are responsible, who are the board of directors of the bank. But as to your point, of course, my line was when people said that, I see you're a banker, I said, I used to be an international banker. I'm now going straight, I'm a politician.
Yeah, both are pretty unpopular, and certainly with me. Did you enjoy working in the city, though?
Not particularly, no. I mean, I had a young family, and it was a means of financing my life. But I had this burning ambition to be a politician.
Yeah.
People ask me why, because it's very corny, but I just love my country. And I wanted to do that.
And I
wanted to campaign against socialism.
You've always been very consistent with this, haven't you? You've been against socialism. You've been concerned about open-door immigration. You've been worried about culture, about what's happening to British culture.
I think it's appalling what's going on at the moment. Absolutely appalling. And I do urge the Prime Minister, if he's watching the shows, I'm sure he does, Nigel, because you're extremely popular. But if the Prime Minister is watching, I would urge him to get his government to do much more about dealing with this wokery. And I had an email from the local chief executive of the local authority, because I'm chairman of my little village in Suffolk, and telling me about the local elections, how they've gone. It signed his name. I think it's Arthur somebody or other. He, bracket, he stroke him. I'm extremely offended. And he said, well, one of my councillors has come out as trans, so I'm showing solidarity. I said, goodness sake, this is an utter absurdity.
Yeah.
And when a teacher is reprimanded because a child has said something about it, criticised another child for identifying as a cat, for God's sake, what on earth are we doing now?
Yeah. And a teacher might lose their job over this.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why I speak out.
Yeah.
Because the Metropolitan Police Service, I thought it was a force, but apparently it's a service, if they're watching. I speak out because I want to protect other people. I had a woman come to my surgery, worked in the NHS, and she was absolutely mortified. She was in tears. She had a black female boss who was giving her a really hard time. She said, Sir Gerald, I've done my level best to everything she asked, and I'm still getting grief. And this woman should have been, this lady constituent of mine should have been able to have gone to a manager and said, I'm being treated badly, but couldn't do so because her immediate boss was black.
Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is crackers. I mean, Gerald, you've been, as I say, very consistent over decades in what you've believed in. As somebody who got into Parliament, you spent a long time in Parliament, a short gap in the middle of it all, but a long...
I was a retread.
Yeah, but that's very common, you know.
But I won't forget the people of Cannock and Burntwood.
Yeah, your first constituency.
Who elected me, a pinstripe-suited banker, in a mining constituency in 1983. So if anybody in Cannock and Burntwood is watching, you gave me the privilege of...
And how interesting, if you fast forward that to 2014, 15, 16... when I was campaigning in Canada on Brexit, they were right there. You know? Yeah, they were right. No question about it.
Sound people in the Midlands.
Now, you got absolutely tucked up, didn't you? You and Neil Hamilton.
Yes.
The famous Panorama. I mean, I know all about being stitched up in newspapers and programmes, but this was a big one, wasn't it, what happened to you?
Yes, we just arrived in Parliament in 1983, and there was the Panorama did a programme called Maggie's Militant Tendencies, suggesting that a number of Tory MPs, about 6 of us, were basically in cahoots with the extreme right, and there was a bridge to this extreme right. Well, the other 4 were established parliamentarians, and everybody in the parliamentary party just laughed it off. Absolutely ridiculous. But Neil and I were brand new.
Yeah.
And we saw that our careers were just going to be destroyed, so we decided to litigate and to fight a libel action. We had the support of Sir James Goldsmith, Jimmy Goldsmith, great man, and Jimmy Gulliver of Distillers. But we'd have lost everything. And I did about a couple of months before the case actually went to court, and took 2.5 years to go to court in 1986. But I did send a letter to the Deputy Director of the BBC saying, understand, if we lose everything. And if you lose, understand, you're going to lose everything as well. And, of course, the Director General, Alistair Milne, was fired by Duke Hussey, the incoming chairman of the BBC.
It was a massive scandal of its day, wasn't it?
It was an appalling scandal.
Yeah.
And it was demonstrative of the culture in the BBC. I mean, one of the interesting things, I don't think many people know this, but one of the interesting things that we have the uncut tapes, incidentally. Neil and I have the uncut tapes, and it makes Goebbels look like an amateur. Yeah. And the chairman of the Young Conservatives, they'd done a report, some sort of similar report on entryism, and the chairman had been interviewed on the programme, and he was asked, what about Howarth's mother? My mother set up something called the Immigration Control Association. She was a front runner in the campaign to alert the British public to the dangers of mass immigration, and so the interviewer said to him, "What about Howarth's mother?" He said, "Well, I'd rather not about that. It's not right." And he was goaded into denouncing me because of my mother.
Yeah, and
that's the BBC.
And any association with Enoch Powell, who was considered to be bedeviled by them, and all the rest of it. But you had a long career in politics. But what interests me is from 2002 to 2010, there you were, shadow defence, and your parents both RAF, yourself a keen pilot, and your clear passion for defence of the realm, the British forces, always come through your parliamentary career. We've had 13 years, Gerald, 13 years of a Conservative government that have slashed all 3 services in the most astonishing way, haven't they?
Yes, but let me explain as briefly as I can, as you will permit me. We came into government in 2010 inheriting a budget deficit of £165 billion. Mm-hmm. We had to do something about it. I knew it was bad in the Ministry of Defence because I had people who were telling me, quite senior officers were telling me, perfectly legitimately, they weren't divulging state secrets, but they were telling me it was bad. So we knew we were going to inherit a bad situation. Don't forget the Carrier programme was delayed by 9 months, cost £600 million simply to delay the programme under Labour. But we came in with that.
But Gerald, that's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago, but
and we're still cutting.
And we're still cutting, although the budget has gone up by 24 billion. But we've given a lot of kit away to the Ukrainians, quite rightly so too. But we have an imperative to rebuild our stocks. Now, my son-in-law, James Cartledge, happens to be the Minister for Defence Procurement, the job that I shadowed for 6 years. He is doing that. And I know that he, although not a background in defence, he is working day and night trying to deal with these procurement problems. Part of the problem is you're dealing with the cutting edge of technology. If you don't have cutting edge of technology, you're going to be beaten by your opponent.
Yeah, so it's not just manpower.
It's not just manpower.
No, and I get that, and I understand that, and I do get that. Grant Shapps appointed today, career politician. He's not going to have the same passion for this as the outgoing Defence Secretary.
Well, of course, when he was standing for the leadership of the party last year, he did make it clear that he believed that defence spending should be increased to 3% of gross domestic product. It's just over 2%.
What would it do if Howarth was in charge? What would
as my son-in-law told me, he said, Gerald, you probably think it ought to be 7%. I said, that's a good starting point, James. But that is what we... one interesting point of the many interesting points that Ben Wallace made was that by the end of this decade, we could really be into a hot war because we have allowed people like Putin to get away with impunity. Yeah. And if we're in a hot war, we are going to need men, women, and we're going to need kit. Yeah, and we're going to need it fast.
And
so the imperative now, I hope that Grant Shapps, whom I know extremely well, is a great guy, he's a fellow pilot, I hope that Grant will stick by what he said last year. He wants to see defence spending at 3% of GDP.
Well, I hope it is, Gerald, too, because, actually, you talk about Putin, but, I fear China more. And I want to say this to you.
I share that.
Outside of politics, congratulations on 50 years of marriage.
Nigel, how do you know that?
Well, there you are. So she must be very long-suffering, is all I can say.
Well, I couldn't have done it without Lizzie. There's no two ways about that. And she didn't marry a politician. She married a banker, and here we are. No, I'm very, very fortunate indeed. I've got a fantastic wife who's stuck by me through thick and thin, not least through that ghastly Panorama business.
Well, I think on that note, we'll say cheers to her, and thank you to you.
To Lizzie.
For joining.
Thank you very much.
Lizzie. Thank you.